Recently, I published a video about Linux where I said it isn't really a Windows alternative. Some people agreed, others strongly disagreed. And honestly, I get why. Because in one very real sense, Linux is a Windows alternative. No argument there. If you're leaving Windows and installing Linux instead, that's an alternative by definition. The problem I was trying to get at wasn't whether Linux can replace Windows. It was what people expect when we call it a Windows alternative. A lot of people hear alternative to Windows and assume that means basically Windows but free, or Windows without Microsoft. They expect the same behaviors, the same assumptions, the same handholding, just with a different logo. That was the angle of my previous video. Not that Linux isn't an alternative, but that promoting it that way often sets the wrong expectations. Clearly, I didn't communicate that as well as I should have, so that part's on me. To be clear, I'm not discounting Linux at all. I use Linux myself, and I don't care for Windows, especially Windows 11 with its telemetry, ads, and constant attempts to sell services to people who already paid for the operating system. But Linux, generally speaking, does not hold your hand. Yes, there are distributions like Linux Mint or Bazzite that try to smooth the experience. That's great. But because of the freedom Linux gives you, and because of deep technical and philosophical differences, it behaves very differently from Windows. And that difference matters. So when we tell someone Linux is a Windows alternative, we should probably pause and ask, what do they think that means? They may be expecting a system that works like Windows in familiar ways. When that expectation isn't met, disappointment follows. Not because Linux is bad, but because the framing was off. If instead we say Linux is an alternative, but it's a very different system, expectations shift. New users are less likely to feel frustrated or misled because they know going in that they're learning something new, not installing Windows with a different coat of paint. Some people hear this and think it's insulting to users' intelligence. They assume everyone already knows Linux is different. But that's not reality. I've worked in tech retail. I've done freelance web development. Many people are not tech savvy, and that's fine. My goal with the previous video was to challenge how we communicate what Linux is to newcomers. If that didn't come across clearly, that's on me. So yes, Linux is a Windows alternative, but there are caveats. And that's not a flaw. That's the point.